It was December 24th, 2009, Christmas Eve. While families gathered to celebrate, a 29-year-old trainer entered the water for a routine training session at Loro Parque in the Canary Islands. No one imagined that, minutes later, that moment would turn into a nightmare. Alexis Martínez, a man who had dedicated his life to animals, would die in the jaws of Keto, a captive orca, daughter of the infamous Tilikum, the same killer of Dawn Brancheau at SeaWorld. This is the story that shook Europe, the first fatal attack by a captive orca outside the US. A tragedy that exposed once again the dark price of entertainment involving intelligent and emotionally complex animals. Who was Alexis Martínez? Detailed biography and connection with animals. Alexis Martínez was not just another trainer at a water park. He was the embodiment of a childhood dream, the realization of a passion that had burned within him since his earliest years. Born in 1980 in sunny Murcia, Spain, Alexis developed an almost spiritual connection with the ocean before he even learned to swim. His parents said that at the age of 4, during family vacations on the coast, he would be mesmerized watching the fish in the crystal clear waters of the Mediterranean, refusing to leave the beach until sunset. As a teenager, while his peers memorized the names of soccer players, Alexis memorized cetacean species and their migrations. His collection of documentaries on marine life was his most precious possession. He watched The Underwater World of Jacques Cousteau over and over, dreaming of the day when he could be close to those majestic creatures. This obsession led him to study marine biology at the University of Barcelona, where he stood out for his research on dolphin communication. When he joined Loro Parque in 2004, Alexis did not see it as just a job, but as a mission. While many trainers were content to follow protocols, he spent extra hours studying the behavior of each orca, jotting down details about their moods and preferences in notebooks. Colleagues reported that he had a unique way with the animals, a rare combination of quiet authority and genuine respect. He talked to them, said a co-worker, not in the literal sense, but there was a communication that went beyond standard commands. Alexis understood when Keto was agitated even before any visible signs. And Keto was his biggest challenge. The 5.5-meter, 2.5-ton male had inherited not only the impressive size of his father Tilikum, but also his unpredictable nature. Since arriving at Loro Parque in 2006, Keto had already shown worrying signs. Biting trainers during shows, obsessive behaviors such as repeatedly banging his head against the tank walls, and episodes of aggression for no apparent reason. Alexis knew Tilikum's story, how the orca had killed 3 people, including experienced trainer Dawn Brancheau at SeaWorld. He knew that the stress of captivity could turn even the most docile animals into time bombs. But he firmly believed that with patience and understanding, he could form a different bond with Keto. In the months leading up to the accident, Alexis had been documenting subtle changes in Keto's behavior. In his diary, he wrote, "Keto is different, more reclusive. He seems to be always alert, as if waiting for something. When I look into his eyes, I no longer see the curiosity I saw before. I see something deeper, darker." He shared these observations with the park staff, suggesting that they reduce Keto's training sessions and give him more rest time. But in a business that revolved around daily shows, his concerns were largely ignored. What few knew was that Alexis was in a growing internal conflict. In letters to his family, he confessed his doubts about his work. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm helping these animals or being complicit in their imprisonment. But if I leave, who will care for them with the same respect?" This duality between his love for the animals and his growing awareness of the cruelty of captivity made his work increasingly distressing. But Alexis persisted, convinced that his presence made a difference in the lives of those orcas. Keto's family, the legacy of Tilikum, the cruel fate of captive orcas. Keto carried in her veins not only the blood of a line of ocean hunters, but the weight of a legacy of suffering. Her father, Tilikum, had been brutally torn from the icy waters of Iceland in 1983, when he was only 2 years old. The capture method was as cruel as it was efficient. Boats cornered groups of orcas in fjords, nets were thrown, and the youngest calves, the most docile and trainable, were forcibly separated from their mothers. Witnesses described the adult orcas emitting anguished sounds as they watched their children being taken away. Tilikum spent his first year in captivity in a concrete pool in Reykjavik, a space so small he could barely move. In 1984, he was sold to SeaWorld of the Pacific in Canada, where he lived in a circular tank only 30 meters in diameter, less than 1% of the territory a wild orca travels in a single day. It was there that his behavior began to deteriorate. Deprived of natural stimuli, the marine giant developed stereotypical behaviors. He swam in endless circles, floated motionless for hours, and sometimes bit the bars of his confinement until he broke his teeth. In 1991, Tilikum participated in his first fatal attack on trainer Kelty Byrne. The incident should have been a wake-up call, but instead, he was sold to SeaWorld Orlando, where his genetic value as a breeder outweighed his dangerous reputation. In the years that followed, Tilikum was forced to mate repeatedly, siring 21 calves, most of whom died prematurely, and becoming the industry's most profitable stud. Keto was one of those offspring, born in 1995 in SeaWorld's sterile tank. Keto's life followed the same tragic script. Separated from his mother at age 4, a common practice that would never occur in the wild, where calves remain with their mothers for decades, he was transferred between parks like a valuable commodity. In 2006, he arrived at Loro Parque in the Canary Islands, where he was billed as the big attraction of the new orca show. The tank, although larger than his father's at SeaWorld, was still a claustrophobic prison for an animal of his size, too shallow for meaningful dives and lacking any environmental stimulation. Recent neurobiological studies reveal that captive orcas show atrophy in areas of the brain associated with cognition and emotional regulation, a direct effect of sensory deprivation. While wild orcas live in complex matriarchal societies with their own dialects and lifelong family bonds, Keto was forced to live with unrelated individuals from different ethnic groups, ecotypes, in an artificial mix that generated constant conflict. Transgenerational trauma is well documented in mammals. Keto not only inherited Tilikum's genes, but also the psychological scars of decades of confinement. In the wild, male orcas develop specific behaviors learned from their family groups. Hunting techniques, communication, navigation. Keto never had this education. His socialization consisted of tricks forced for food and nighttime isolation in secondary tanks. Alexis' last moments, the fatal attack in detail. On the morning of December 24th, the atmosphere at Loro Parque was calm. The public shows would not begin until the afternoon, and the staff was conducting their usual maintenance training. Alexis arrived early, as he always did, to check on the orcas before the sessions. Colleagues later reported that he seemed concerned about Keto's behavior, who since the previous day had been swimming unusually, repeatedly banging his head against the bars separating the tanks. At around 11:15 a.m., Alexis donned his wetsuit and entered the water for a basic exercise session with Keto. Security cameras captured the first few minutes of interaction, initially calm, with Alexis giving verbal commands and Keto responding with precise movements. But at 11:23 a.m., something changed. Eyewitnesses described Keto suddenly stopping in the middle of an exercise, remaining completely motionless for a few seconds, a behavior atypical for orcas in training. When Alexis approached to investigate, the orca spun with impressive speed and grabbed the trainer by the abdomen with its mouth, dragging him to the bottom of the 12-meter-deep tank. What followed were 3 minutes of pure terror. Keto would not let go of Alexis, keeping him submerged while shaking him violently from side to side. From the deck, the other trainers ran around in panic, trying every emergency technique. They threw nets, banged on the water, activated underwater alarms. Nothing distracted Keto from his prey. One of the team members jumped into the water without protective equipment, trying to get close enough to help Alexis, but was forced to retreat when Keto turned his attention to him. Meanwhile, Alexis, already visibly injured and disoriented, desperately tried to reach the surface in the brief moments when the orca released him between shakes. At 11:26 a.m., Keto finally released Alexis's lifeless body, which floated to the surface. The park's medical team arrived in less than 2 minutes, but it was too late. The injuries were catastrophic: multiple broken ribs, deep punctures in the lungs caused by the orca's teeth, and severe head trauma. Drowning came quickly, as Alexis lost consciousness within the first 30 seconds of the attack, according to the forensic analysis. What made the case even more shocking was Loro Parque's initial attempt to cover up the truth. The official statement referred to an incident during routine exercises and accidental drowning, without mentioning the violent attack. It was only when videos were leaked and witnesses began speaking to the press that the real story emerged, revealing not only the brutality of the attack, but also the warning signs that had been ignored in the months leading up to it. The final report on the incident, obtained by investigative journalists, showed that Keto had exhibited aggressive behavior on at least 3 occasions in the 2 months prior to the fatal attack, including biting another trainer who required 12 stitches. None of these incidents were made public, and the shows continued as normal until that fateful day when Alexis Martínez paid with his life for the mistakes of an industry that prioritizes spectacle over safety and animal welfare. The impact and legacy, criticism of the industry. Alexis's death led to protests in Europe and reignited the debate about orcas in captivity. In 2013, the documentary Blackfish exposed the horrors of SeaWorld. But Loro Parque continued its shows. Keto is still at the park. In 2015, he attacked another trainer, who luckily survived. Tilikum died in 2017, after 34 years in captivity. Meanwhile, Alexis became a symbol. His family sued Loro Parque, and the case inspired stricter laws in Spain. But no law will bring Alexis back. This is the story of Alexis Martínez, a man who loved orcas but was betrayed by the industry that exploits them. Of Keto, an orca condemned to suffering since birth, and of the system that prioritizes profit over lives. If this video has impacted you, please like it. Every like helps spread the message. Share it so that more people know the truth behind the shows. And subscribe to the channel to follow real stories that the media doesn't tell you. Together we can push for change. Orca captivity must end. Alexis's death cannot be in vain. Until the next story.